Hello, and welcome to 5 Minute Math. Today we are looking at the sixth grade concept of summarizing categorical data. This is 6.12D Readiness Practice, the Proficient version. If you are interested in exploring the 6.12D Readiness Practice for the intermediate or advanced versions, or the Readiness Practice resource aligned with any other standard, you can find those by using the link in the video description. So we have 120 middle school students at Central Middle School. They were surveyed about their favorite candy. We have a percentage bar graph, and we just need to know how many students chose each candy. So our Snickers here is this light red, and let's go put 25% on that. Now, the M&Ms go up to 40%, but they're not a true 40%. It's 40 minus that 25. Right? So it's going to end up being 15% because all of this needs to add up to 100%. From 40 up to this looks like 75%. It's going to be the blue, which is the nerd, so 40 to 75 is 35. Reese's goes from 35 to 95, and so that's going to be 20. And then it looks like 95 to 100 Sour Patch Kids, only 5%. So those are my percentages. Now, what we could do is we can turn this into a table. So Snickers, M&Ms, right? Nerds. We'll need some type of way to organize our work, so we might as well make a table. Relative frequency table. And then so I'm going to put SPK for Sour Patch Kids. All right, so our first column here is going to be our percent. So that's our 25, 15, 35, 20. And 5. Now what we need next is our answers, which what we're looking for is our actual number. So I'm going to put a dollar sign right here. And I'll do it in green because that's going to be our answer, that dollar sign. So how do we figure this out? Well, what we need is 120. So there's a few different ways we can do this. Okay. So we can take 25%, let's look at Snickers first, of 120. And so what that's going to mean is we need 0.25 times 120 because 0.25 is equal to 25%. And then so we could just multiply the two. So that's one way to do it. So that's going to be 0, that's 10, that's 600. And then I've got a 0, a 4, and a 2. And I don't need to multiply that third row because that's just going to be zeros. So we're going to end up with 30 with 2 digits behind the decimal, so 2 digits right there. All right, so 25% of 120 is 30. Now, if we wanted to, what we could do is we could just multiply, turn each of these percents into a decimal and multiply. That works, and if you want to do that, that's perfectly fine. Another thing we could do is we can just make ourselves a little bit of a cheat sheet. So 120, so what is 10% of 120? Well, if you divide by 10, that's the same as multiplying by 0.10, right? Or 1/10, dividing by 10, multiplying by 1/10. And so we just are going to shift the decimal over 1 to the left. So that's going to end up being a 12 because I take my 120 and I move my decimal over once. And then so that's my base unit of 10% is going to be 12. So I could just add 12s. 30% is going to give me 36. And 40% is going to give me 48. Well, how does that help me? Well, I've got my Reese's at 20%, so I can already tell you that that's going to be 24. Now, the rest of these are 5s, so we're looking now for midpoints. If 5 comes between 0 and 12, then that's going to be a 6. 15 comes between 12 and 24, that's going to be 18. 25 comes between 25 and 30, which is 24 and 36, so that is going to be 30. And then 42 will be our last if we need a 35. And so that's another way to do it. You could just make yourself a little table of numbers, and then so my 15 is 18, my 35 is 42, and then my 5 is 6. So those are my answers. Now, if you wanted to ever double check your work, you need to make sure that all of this needs to add up to 120, because 100% of the students are seen here. And so I've got 8 and 2 is 10, 6 and 4 is another 10. That's a 2, and then a 2 and a 3 make 5, 6, 10, 12, 120. So it needs to all add up to 120. So we're good to go there. So next we've got some categories here. Sports, music, art club, robotics. We need to complete a relative frequency table like we just did, but this time we need to calculate the percents. It's not given to us on a percent bar graph. So let's do it like this. We'll do sports, music, art club. So this time what they're going to do is they're going to give us the numbers. We need to create the percentages. Robotics. All right, so I will go ahead and do it in the same order as the last one. So what I'm going to do is I'll put my numbers over here on the right hand like we did last time, 12, 9, 6, 3, and our answers will be the percents. All right, so how do we find the percent? Well, how many kids were there? Let's add that up. 12 and 9 is 21, and 6 and 3 is 9. So 21 and 9 makes 30. Okay, so this is really, we can look at it as 12 thirtieths, 9 thirtieths, 6 thirtieths, and 3 thirtieths. So we can either divide up, we can simplify, right? We just need to turn this into a decimal so we can turn it into a percent. So let's see, if I divide this by threes, I'm going to get 4 tenths. And I could divide that by twos. I could have divided by sixes, looks like. 2 fifths, but honestly, you know what works is that 4 tenths. 4 tenths is 0.4, so then that's going to be 40%. So that was actually a little bit easier than the 2 fifths. 9 thirtieths, if I divide this by 3, it's going to end up being 3 tenths. So that's 0.3, which is 30%, because I moved the decimal over twice, right? 1, 2 gets me 30. 1, 2 gets me 30. Let's divide this by twos. Nope, let's divide that by threes, because that will get me to tenths. That's what I'm looking for. 2 tenths, 0.2, 1, 2, 20%. Now, this last one, we can just see how much is left, or we could just keep doing like this. It should double check to itself. That's going to be 1 tenth, 0.1. And so let's double check to make sure 40 and 30 make 70, and then 20 and 10 make 30. So we're good. That's 100%. So that is our relative frequency table with the percentages added by us. For our third problem, we have a relative frequency table, and we need to calculate the frequencies and then make our own chart. Okay, we can do that. So do they tell us how many vehicles there are? They do not. So first we need to add. All right, so they're not quite lined up, so I'm just gonna add over here. 18, 4, 20. All right, that's 16, that's 20. 2, 4, 5, 6, 60. All right, so all of these are going to be out of 60. So 8 out of 60, and so on. 8 out of 60, 10 out of 60, 18 out of 60, 4 out of 60, and then 20 out of 60. All right, so let's see if we can just calculate some of these. 8 out of 60. Let's simplify, and then we might end up needing to um, we might need to go ahead and just divide some of these up. So let's do 8 out of 60. All right, so if we do that here, make myself a little bit of room. All right, 8 out of 60. If I can divide that by 4s, that's going to get 2 out of 15. Okay, so 2/15. Okay, and let's see. I'm just going to divide my 15 into 2, and that's going to get me 20. That's going to go in one time, and we're just going to keep dividing here. That's going to be 3 times. So that's going to be 45. And then look what I get. I get a 5 again, so it's going to end up being that 1.3 repeating. Okay, so I can call this, so really this is 0.133333. So if I move the decimal over twice, it's going to be 13.3 repeating. I'm going to call it 13 1/3%, just to be a little bit more accurate. All right, so my 10/60ths is going to end up being, if I divide by 10s, it's going to give me 1/6. So 6 divided by 6 goes into 1. And so we're going to end up with a 1. It's a 4. Goes in 6 times, and then it's also going to get a repeating. So it feels like this is what we're going to get on some of these. This is a 1.6. Now 0.66666, that's actually 2/3. So this is going to be 16 2/3. Remember this, all the percentages need to add back up to 100. So we have to get these 1/3 and 2/3 to really kind of make it accurate. Okay, so my 18 out of 60, divide that by 6s. I'm going to get 3/10. Okay, so that's a little bit easier. 3/10 is going to be 0.3, which is 30%. All right, so we could do that pretty simply. Let's check our, the 20 out of 60 is going to be pretty easy as well. 20 out of 60, because you divide by 20s, and you are going to get 1/3. So remember, that one is 0.333333 forever. It's 33 1/3. All right, so since that's my 1/3 and my 2/3 from 16 and 13 make a whole, so that 4 out of 60 is probably going to end up being a fraction as well. So let's see. 4 out of 60. If I divide that by 4s, I'm going to get 1 out of 15. All right, so I already did a 2 out of 15. Let's do a 1 out of 15, or that 1 out of 15, yeah. Let's do this. 15 goes into 1, and so that's going to be 0, obviously. Let's bring a decimal down. That also is a 0, so we're not getting anything there either. It's not until we get a 100 that we get a 15. Let's see, 6 is going to be 90. So that's going to be 90. And then here's my repeating. It's just going to be 6, 6, 6 forever. So if I move my decimal over twice, it's 6 and 0.66666, or 6 and 2/3. Now, if you want to just double check your work here, we can see that quickly. The 6 and 2/3 and the 33 1/3, this makes 40. We already have a 30, and then the 13 and 1/3 and the 16 and 2/3, that makes 30. So if you add your 30, 30, 60, we're back up to 100%. So my last portion of this problem is to turn this into a relative frequency table. We're going to have to guesstimate on some of these 13 1/3 and 16 and 2/3 and so on and so forth. So let's make my motors, let's just do it in the order they give it to us. Motorcycle, I'm not going to go up to 8. I'm going to go up to that 13 1/3. So let's just kind of make it like this. All right, so let's pretend like that's 13 1/3. It's not going to be perfect, but we know that the 16 2/3, if we add to that, gets me up to 30. So that's going to be kind of my benchmark right there. Is let's just take my trucks and start from where I ended with my motorcycle. And there we go. I've got a nice stopping point at 30 right there. All right, sedan's pretty easy. It is just straight 30. So I'm going to go from my 30 up to my 60. And we're just going to shade that in. And then my last two equal 40. So I'm going to have to kind of guesstimate on that van. That van is 6 2/3. So I'm going to go up to 66 2/3. So just a hair past that 65. And then I need 33 1/3 from the SUV, but that's just going to get me to the very end. So I could just do the very end here, and that will be the rest of it. That's how we can make a relative frequency chart. If you are interested in exploring the 6.12D readiness practice for the proficient, or for the intermediate or advanced version, or the readiness practice resource line with any other standard, you can find those by using the link in the video description.